Kyle Harris claims that when they came around over the hill, Stryker ran up to the first agent, Agent Cooper, kind of went around him, smelling, see who it was. Agent Cooper later said he didn't want to shoot Stryker because he didn't want to initiate a firefight. Stryker ran up to the second agent, Agent Roderick, and Roderick shot and killed Stryker with the second round. He shot him in the spine. And Sammy, I guess, said something like, "You asshole, you killed my dog." Fired a couple shots as he turned around to run back to the cabin. The third marshal in the area, Deegan, came out from the woods, shot at Sammy. He hit Sammy in the elbow. Kyle Harris shot from the hip. He hit Deegan once in the chest, killed him. Then Agent Cooper shot and killed Sammy in the back, fatally wounding him. Kyle continued on to the cabin. Both sides pretty much came and got there dead. The federal agents, the marshals, a couple of them stayed with Deegan's body. With the rest of them went to a neighboring household. They called their headquarters. They called their supervisors. The U.S. Marshals Crisis Center in Washington, D.C. was put on alert. The initial reports that were sent out essentially said that federal agents had been killed, that they were still pinned down, that there was a big firefight. So a short time later, an FBI hostage rescue team from Quantico was dispatched, as was the Idaho State Patrol, Idaho National Guard, Boundary County Sheriff's Department, and lots of other law enforcement. Soon, over 400 law enforcement descended on this area. The neighbors, folks from the area, obviously, a lot of whom just wanted to live and be left alone, pushed back quite a bit. A lot of them gathered at a roadblock the feds had set up. Some even tried to go around the roadblock to support and resupply the Weavers, but they were stopped by the feds. The rules of engagement, there's some questions on this, but it appears that Dick Richards, who was higher up in the FBI, essentially gave the agents on the ground more leeway, gave the HRT snipers more leeway. So a couple days after the initial encounter with the marshals, the snipers were in position. They were supposed to provide cover for an armored personnel carrier, which was to bring negotiators up to talk to the Weavers. But before that even happened, one of the snipers, Lou Harichi, opened fire on the Weavers. Randy Weaver and Kyle Harris had been going to the shed nearby their cabin to visit the body of Randy Weaver's deceased son, Sammy, and the sniper fired a shot, hit Randy Weaver in the shoulder, to exit his armpit. They started running back towards the house, and as they entered the house, his wife, Vicky, was holding their 10-month-old baby. The sniper took a second shot through the door. He later claims in testimony that he was trying to shoot 10 inches above the head of Sarah Weaver, who he believed was crouching down behind the door, which by itself violates the rules of engagement because they're not supposed to shoot at children, and she was 16 years old. But the shot actually went through the door, shot Vicky Weaver in the face, basically exploded her face. The bullet then went and hit Kyle Harris in the chest, as did fragments of Vicky Weaver's skull. They punctured his lung, they broke ribs. So essentially all the adults, without being aggressive, without shooting at the feds, then were left either dead or seriously injured. The standoff in total lasted for 12 days. It wasn't ended until some civilian negotiators, including Bo Gritz, who was an Army guy himself. He was known to Randy Weaver and essentially talked them out so Kyle Harris could get some help so he wouldn't die and bleed out. One thing Bo Gritz did to get Randy Weaver to come out was secure a verbal agreement by Wyoming lawyer Spence to represent Weaver. On April 14th, 1993, the trial started. The prosecution was led by Howen, and they called 56 witnesses over the next 36 days. This court case was the longest court day in Idaho history on the federal level. These 56 witnesses, stories weren't adding up. There was a lot of lies, a lot of cover-ups. Weaver's attorney Spence got them to admit on the stand that they had tampered with evidence. They had removed some bullets from the scene, later putting them back to be photographed. Howen was later forced to apologize in open court, and when Howen was doing the closing arguments for the prosecution, he pretty much broke down and said, "I can't continue doing this," and left the court. And they had to reconvene the next day. I mean, that just shows how morally flawed this whole case and incident was. Kyle Harris was acquitted on all charges. They found he acted in self-defense, and Randy Weaver was acquitted on all charges save for his initial missing his court date. And he was credited with time served, which had been 14 months, but he still had to serve another 4 months in prison and pay a $10,000 fine. So Spence, Weaver's attorney, at the conclusion said, "A jury today has said that you can't kill somebody just because you wear badges and then cover up these homicides by prosecuting the innocent." In the Senate hearings about Ruby Ridge, then FBI Director Louis Freeh said that law enforcement did overreact at Ruby Ridge. He said that on record. Less than a year after Ruby Ridge, some of the same law enforcement personnel that had been here violating the rights of the Weavers were outside a small Texas town called Waco, doing the same to some people there. So in the 2 years that followed Ruby Ridge, the FBI did an investigation of its personnel, eventually giving letters of censure to 5 FBI agents and suspending 3 of them for up to 15 days for their actions. And these are actions that resulted in a 14-year-old boy being killed, a 42-year-old woman and mother being killed, and property being destroyed. In August of 1995, after a lot of attempts, the federal government paid Randy Weaver $100,000 and gave each of his daughters $1 million, though they admitted no wrongdoing. Kyle Harris also had been seeking some compensation for the rights violations brought upon him by the federal government, and though the prosecutors initially claimed that they would never give anybody money who had killed a marshal, the federal government did eventually pay him $380,000. In 1997, the Boundary County prosecutor brought charges against FBI sniper Lou Horici for manslaughter, but unfortunately justice was not served. The federal government quickly moved the case to the federal level and protected him with sovereign immunity, basically saying that he was obeying orders and he could not be held accountable. This tragic incident initially stemmed from a disputed firearms transaction. Was what happened justified because a piece of metal may have been a quarter-inch shorter than some bureaucrat deemed acceptable? It's the difference between man-made legislation, which is arbitrary, and natural law, which is not. This firearms transaction did not violate anybody's rights, yet it resulted in surveillance of the Weavers by the U.S. Marshals. Prior to sending the Marshals onto the Weaver property, there was no discussion of just going to his cabin and knocking on the door. Instead, grown men, dressed in camo, carrying M16s, trespassed on his property and killed his son and dog. After this exchange of gunfire with the Marshals, the FBI took control of the scene, only compounding the missteps that were done. The FBI's plan, their initial plan, did not include any provisions for negotiations with the Weavers, and the rules of engagement communicated by the supervisors gave the agents on the ground more leeway to open fire. This caused the Denver SWAT team, which was on site, to state that they could not follow such rules, and later a Department of Justice investigation found them unconstitutional. But that won't bring back Randy's son or his wife, and the lack of accountability for the government post-Ruby Ridge is shocking. Recall what the Weavers' attorney stated, that a jury today has said that you can't kill somebody just because you wear badges. Yet unfortunately it seems like that's what happened. I encourage you to think for yourself and ask how this could have been prevented and how similar situations can be prevented in the future.